You're kidding me.
Yeah.
No, no,
No.
no.
Yeah. Now you're on.
Really?
Yeah.
Good morning, beloved ones. I'm Punchy because we are driving our motorized buckboard in an atmospheric river to go shopping to buy vegetables. There are other people in the parking lot, so there must be other crazy people here, but not very many. I'm now going out the door, and Lon is going to have to reverse the camera.
Okay. Yes, I'm going to reverse the camera here.
He's driving very well, by the way.
Oh, you heard that. You heard that. I'm driving very well. Look, I'm in a poncho.
Which Lon doesn't know how they work, so it's a scary thing. I can't get him to ever wear one. Oh my God.
And just,
I obviously don't know how I look.
you look beautiful, darling, as always.
Your glasses are funky.
Okay, yes, I'm starting early. Starting early, or it's either start early or not start at all. It's quite an exciting time that we're having. I did get coffee at the last place, and if you'll excuse me while I drink coffee in front of you, I need it to warm up. Oh, I love coffee. Anyway, here we are. It's really supposed to be a very, very crazy day with wind gusts. If you believe the wind warning things, up in some places anyway, up to 70 miles an hour. But we haven't had that so far. I don't want to jinx it, but keep your fingers crossed for us. Anyway, I have an idea this morning because I started to sort of review the major landmarks of my magical diaries, which I do far too seldom, and I just realized that I've been more or less fascinated with magic and Aleister Crowley in particular for now 50 years. Because it was shortly after my son was born that I started really getting into the more serious aspects of magic and occultism. So that brought my attention anyway to reminiscing about where my head was at back when I was a 24-year-old dilettante, failed successful musician, failed yogi, failed mystic dilettante, and just starting to try to make a living in a world that wasn't kind of like show business, which since the age of 14 I had been seriously pursuing my music career. But anyway, and it occurred to me that a few years ago I was given the honor, I was given the privilege to introduce the book that more or less brought me into the world of Aleister Crowley, and started off this whole wonderful adventure. And that was The Legend of Aleister Crowley. Now, 2 years ago, maybe, or whenever, I probably shared this introduction with you before, but I'm going to probably not read the entire thing, but we'll see. Anyway, here it is. It's the foreword to the 2016 edition of The Legend of Aleister Crowley. Let's see here. I do have a picture of it. Okay. That is the picture of the edition that I first bought in a little bookstore in Laguna Beach, California. It looks funky, doesn't it? It's a funky looking book. But anyway. Oh, am I going to start that? The Legend of Aleister Crowley was my first real introduction to the personality and works of Aleister Crowley. I first read it at a pivotal season of my own life. It was a section too, I guess. Shortly after our son was born in 1972. To say it was a watershed moment in my life would be a monumental understatement. I would go on to spend the better part of the next 40 years of my life studying Crowley, digesting his writings, meeting and learning from people who had known him when he was alive, practicing his magical and meditation techniques, and attempting to live the philosophy of life he so passionately espoused. However, my first few stumbling encounters with the works of the man who called himself the Beast 666 were awkward and comically terrifying. I was a 24-year-old failed yogi and fledgling Western mystic poser, working my way through the monographs of the Rosicrucian order Amorc, the traditional Martinist order, and the builders of the Adytum, a BOTA. And I'll digress just for a second to say all of those organizations are, or at least were when I was involved in them, fine organizations, and in their own way, true and serious mystical orders. The builders of the Adytum in particular were my introduction to not only tarot, but Kabbalah and Golden Dawn style magical work. So I really lucked out, just stumbling into things. Amorc was a fine experience and gave me my first in-temple being a ritual officer experience. So don't think I'm denigrating them in any way. I fancied myself a bit of a heretic and spiritual rebel, but I certainly wanted nothing to do with anything that smacked of black magic or Satanism. Everything I had read about Aleister Crowley up to that point was bad. And frankly, I hadn't read that much about him, but what I did read was spooky, icky. Anyway, my occult dictionary listed him as a black magician who ate human flesh and sacrificed 120 babies one year. My blue-haired Rosicrucian elders told me he was the devil himself. My fellow Martinists cautioned me not to even utter his name. My tarot-loving friends in BOTA warned me that his teachings were sexually perverse, and that he advocating advocated performing grotesque and unnatural sexual acts on tarot cards. But for some curious reason, the more my mystical colleagues tried to dissuade me, the more fascinated I became. Who was this guy? As I've written elsewhere, I bought a deck of his Thoth tarot cards, then hysterically gave them away, then took them back after talking with my friend Mad Bob, our family mentor, spiritual mentor and friend, who soundly upbraided me for my display of spiritual cowardice. Crowley was cool. He was a genius and a holy man. If you're really serious about mastering magic and the Hermetic arts, you're going to have to dig deep into what this guy's about. But everyone said he was a Satanist. Was he a Satanist? I asked Bob. No, he wasn't a Satanist. Then he paused and said, well, yes, I guess you could say he was. Then he disagreed with himself once again. No, not really. Finally, he said, look, it doesn't matter if Crowley was a Satanist. He was a good kind of Satanist, and you'll just love him. Trust me. I took Bob at his word, and soon after our curious conversation, I had the opportunity to read Crowley's The Book of Thoth, the work that was written late in his life to accompany the Thoth tarot cards. I felt like a grammar school student trying to read postgraduate papers on magic, philosophy, alchemy, Kabbalah, astrology, comparative religion. Even though I understood only a fraction of what I read, I found Crowley to be brilliant, funny, and someone who obviously mastered the spiritual arts of which he wrote so passionately. Furthermore, it became breathtakingly evident that Crowley had actually achieved the expanded levels of consciousness his magical practices and meditations are designed to trigger. Crowley was the real deal. I thought, anyway. I still think that. And if that means he was a Satanist, then he was a good kind of Satanist, and I did just love him. The Book of Thoth and the Thoth tarot cards, however, provided precious little information about who Crowley was and what his background was. Did you feel the wind almost knocked my car over just now? But I digress! Okay. At the time, books by and about Crowley were very rare, if they existed at all. One afternoon in Laguna Beach bookstore, a beautiful black cat named Catalina. Get it? A beautiful black cat named Catalina guided me to an odd little book that would provide me a clearer picture of Crowley the man, the poet, and the philosopher. Any books by Aleister Crowley? I asked the owner. She looked at me as if I'd asked her for a book about baby torture, and answered that she didn't think she had any Crowley, but pointed to the cat sleeping serenely on the second shelf of a bookcase in the adjacent room. If I have anything, it'll be there in the shelf behind Catalina. That is, if you can get her to move. Sure enough, peeking just behind the somewhat obese feline, whoa! Excuse me. Whoa! I'm in a spot that really picks up the wind here. Sure enough, peeking behind the somewhat obese feline was what appeared to be a damaged, paper-bound edition of The Legend of Aleister Crowley. It didn't look at all impressive or scary. In fact, it looked rather shoddily produced. The cover almost bare of adornment or color, with only a simple graphic eye in the triangle and the words, "The Legend of Aleister Crowley." And let me see if I can read it. This is what it said at the top. And at the top, in all capital letters, mind you, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The Legend of Aleister Crowley by P.R. Stevenson and Israel Regardie. Prophet of a new aeon, edified as vilified as the most evil man in the world. Who and what is Aleister Crowley that he should be the original or the origin of the legend of infamy or something like that? It's too small for me to read it here on Kindle. I have to confess the titillating language of the crudely printed blurbs on the cover intrigued me no end. I stroked Catalina and thanked her, then immediately purchased the book from the shocked proprietor and rushed it home. Now, I was especially impressed with the introduction by Israel Regardie. I recognized the name because I'd already read his classic text, The Tree of Life, as part of my self-guided efforts to learn the Kabbalah. He had been Crowley's secretary in the late 1920s and lived with him in France and Germany during an especially colorful period in Crowley's life. Regardie was just a couple years older than my own father, and so in my eyes represented a generational link between Crowley and me. His frank contemporary writing style was pleasantly palatable and served to lift the verbose, intimidating, larger-than-life Crowley out of the fog of superstitious mythology and placed him in the clear, objective light of psychology and philosophy. Regardie approached Crowley on a very, very psychological level, or he started to later in his life appreciate Crowley more when viewing his work in psychological terms. But I digress. Knowing that this respected and august authority thought so highly of Crowley was very reassuring, and the fact that he put his seal of approval on this little book profoundly elevated its importance in my estimation. The signature line of Regardie's introduction revealed that he lived in Studio City, California, a little over 50 miles from Costa Mesa, where I lived. Suddenly, the vaporous fancies of magical history and legend crystallized into the objective space-time coordinates of my own backyard. Perhaps I could actually meet this guy someday, I thought. Indeed, the gods soon conspired to make this fantasy a reality. In less than 2 years, I found myself sitting in Regardie's living room in Studio City, sipping champagne cocktails and discussing magic and Aleister Crowley with my magical neighbor hero, Regardie. And I remained friends until his death in 1985. I don't need to remind the reader that 1972 was a long time ago. And the world has changed dramatically in the last, now 51 years. Crowley's reputation, if not totally redeemed, has undergone a fair, more balanced evaluation in the court of public opinion, at least among the educated and well-informed. Books by Crowley and about Crowley are abundant and readily available around the world, and in many languages. His teachings and occult organizations flourish worldwide, and his contributions to modern art, literature, philosophy are increasingly acknowledged and recognized. In 2002, the BBC aired a television documentary, Great Britons, based on a poll the network conducted to learn who the British people considered the top 100 greatest British people in history. There, in 73rd place, nestled comfortably between King Henry V of Shakespeare fame and Robert the Bruce of Mel Gibson's Braveheart fame. In between them was occultist, ceremonial magician, poet, painter, novelist, and mountaineer, Aleister Crowley. Okay. Well, thank you for sitting through this exciting wind event here. I don't know if you were able to sense how the lighting, what lighting there was in this overcast sky, turned from gray to nearly black, but it has. I hope you can still see me. But that's it for today. Okay. The rain is not. Yes, it's pouring at the moment, but it's the wind here that's knocking my car about. So keep your fingers crossed that Constance and I make it home safely and dry, and I'll see you tomorrow. Continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.